Hello, everybody. Welcome to 88.1 FM, Fargo-Moorhead, KPPPLP. Bringing you radio in the Fargo-Moorhead area, and we're streaming live on Facebook at 88.1 Fargo-Moorhead, and on YouTube at Duke1517, and on Twitch at A Mexican Crossing Lines. Share the show. It's going to be a doozy.
Welcome, everyone. It's good to see everybody. I've got a really good show tonight on Russian meddling. Everything that you need to know about Russian meddling and how it connects to the presence that we saw in Standing Rock protest camps. Very important. Welcome, everyone, to the show. This is A Mexican Crossing Lines with your host, Cindy Gomez-Schempp.
And Duke Gomez-Schempp.
You're listening to 88.1 FM, KPPPLP, Fargo-Moorhead, where we are adding local color to your airwaves. Tonight, I am going to be talking about Russia, but not focused on the war in Ukraine, although that is in the forefront of all of our minds. Every one of us has our eyes focused on Ukraine and the war of aggression, the invasion and murder of innocent people that we are witnessing every single day. Wall-to-wall coverage of what is happening in Ukraine. Now, there are a number of Americans that have been killed in the war in Ukraine. The latest today was a man with family ties to Minnesota. Did you know that, Duke? There was a guy that has family ties to Minnesota.
Really?
That lost his life.
Wow. That's very unfortunate.
And of course, we now see refugees from Russia and from Ukraine reaching our southern border and asking to seek asylum to get into the United States. Mm-hmm. Ukrainians are successfully coming into the United States, although they have had some difficulties with COVID restrictions and Title 42 being enforced. Okay. Even on Ukrainians at the beginning. So we're now seeing Ukrainians being able to cross into the United States and connect with families that they have here in the United States as they flee the war. And then we also see Russians that are being basically accumulated at the border that are not being allowed to come into the United States because they come from the country of the aggressors.
Yes, they should be making exceptions because people need to escape. I mean, what's going on is horrible. I watch it every day. If I miss part of the day, a whole bunch of things happen. There's other things happening in the news and in the world too, and we need to pay attention to those, and that's one reason we're doing this show tonight. But my mind and my eyes and ears have been really focused on the war in Ukraine because every day something happens. Every day people die. And it's very horrible, and it should affect us all, and we should all be concerned and do things. And the people that actually take themselves and on their own dime go all the way over there and volunteer to protect Ukraine, fight for Ukraine. I think that's just very commendable. You know, I think that is really selfless.
What we're learning in very quick fashion, all of a sudden, now that the war is ongoing and people, it's almost like the scales have fallen away from people's eyes with regard to Putin. Yes. And we are seeing with this naked aggression, this murderous campaign he is waging, the propaganda, the lies, the fear, it's kind of laying everything bare for everyone to see that Putin is a monster. Mm-hmm. He's not smart, like the former guy said. Yeah. In so many interviews. He's not a genius. It's not good what he's doing in Ukraine, as Trump described it in his recent interviews. It is a criminal campaign of murder, of genocide on Ukrainian people. These are war crimes that are already being charged in The Hague. Putin has now, as of today, fired thousands of people in his inner circle of staff because he fears they're going to poison him. He's also put his security officers in house arrest. So the walls are closing in on Putin.
Yeah, how does anything get done in Russia? There's no one working. No one picks up the phone.
We have the sanctions. We have all of these things that are happening, and we're seeing the United States is having a struggle to pull themselves out of Russia, to extract their support, even in the way that they speak about Putin. Trump has still not apologized for all of the butt kissing he has done when he has spoken about Putin. And there's a lot of members of Congress that have taken Russian oligarch money, that have taken that Russian ruble and lined their pockets. And so they're having a hard time criticizing Putin or being on, the side of the victims here, the Ukrainian people. And this is something that has been in process for many years. The planting of Russian spies, what is being referred to as the fifth column, putting in all of these people that are basically Russian agents acting on behalf of Russia, or buying off enough politicians, enough leaders, enough people in the media, so that there is literally a virtual Russian propaganda wind tunnel. I mean, I hope you guys have noticed that Madison Cawthorn, the congressman from North Carolina, and Tucker Carlson, the media infotainment person over at Fox News, is on Russia state media. And they've recently uncovered a memo saying that they want Russian state media to play the messages or the interviews of Tucker Carlson and Cawthorn because it serves Putin's agenda. So it is very eye-opening. It brings back to me a lot of what we saw in Standing Rock, and it kind of came together for me with yesterday's announcement that a water protector's case will be allowed to go forward. And that is the case of Marcus Mitchell.
Oh, yes.
Do y'all remember the case of Marcus Mitchell? For those of you who are new to my program, who don't know what I'm talking about, in 2016, there was a protest against the completion of the Dakota Access Pipeline in North Dakota, near the town of Cannonball, on some lands that were supposedly belonging to one of the indigenous leaders that invited people to come and form this protest. Thousands, tens of thousands of people came over a period of time from April of 2016 to February-ish of 2017. And it was toward the end of the protest, toward the end of the camp's existence. In fact, it was on the day before the inauguration of then President Donald J. Trump.
Oh, yeah.
That a group of peaceful water protectors were standing on a bridge, singing and chanting "Water is life," when a group of police officers shot at them with a whole range of less than lethal weapons, as they call them, including tear gas, including beanbag rounds with lead pellets, including water cannons, including all sorts of you know, damaging,
Yes.
less than lethal
Yep.
stuff. And this gentleman was injured. Let me share a post from one of the activists of the day, John Gonzalez, one of the people who was, John Gonzalez worked for, he worked for a media group. He calls himself a journalist from New Jersey, and he manages a platform, a political platform called Politics and Stuff.
Okay,
I don't know if you remember.
I
that guy.
remember that guy.
He
Yeah,
called
yeah.
himself Standing Bear. That was his
Oh, yeah.
Indian name.
Okay.
And he was with the PIN Progressive Independence of New Rhode Island.
Okay.
News in Rhode Island. So he was very close to the leadership of the camp. He was close to he was a drone pilot as well. He was one of the people working closely together with a lot of the leadership and getting out the news. He was one of those people that was considered to be in the hub of getting out the news.
Oh, yeah.
I say news in quotes because they weren't from the mainstream media. In fact, many of these people were just live streamers. They had platforms and groups on Facebook. But here's what John Gonzalez said at the time about what happened to this water protector. He said, on the morning of January 19, 2017, the day before Trump's inauguration, and this is from the Marcus Mitchell interview that this reporter, John Gonzalez, did. And this is in the voice of Marcus Mitchell himself.
Okay.
On the morning of January 19, 2017, the day before the Trump inauguration, I was shot in my left eye by police at the Backwater Bridge on Highway 1806, just north of Oyate Camp outside of Cannonball, North Dakota. The impact from a non-lethal beanbag round shattered my cheekbone and orbital wall next to my eye. If you could go to the next GoFundMe picture. This is the GoFundMe picture. If you could go to the GoFundMe.
Okay. Here we go.
You can see he sustained a great deal of damage. Here he is pictured on his GoFundMe at the time in the hospital, and you can see if you tighten that shot so you can see a little bit more of what his injuries looked like, that he was severely injured, and especially his face, that eye, that cheekbone that was shattered. And so I'll continue reading here as you look at the picture of his injuries. The impact from the non-lethal beanbag round shattered my cheekbone and orbital wall next to my eye, resulting in loss of vision, hearing, sense of smell, taste, and touch on the left side of the entire left side of my face. The police officers that shot me were aiming directly at me with the intention to cause serious harm. I was found in a hospital in Bismarck, North Dakota. The location and news of my injury was not released by Morton County or the hospital due to security reasons, quote unquote. I believe that the police and hospital intentionally tried to hide my injuries from the public. At the hospital, I was handcuffed to the bed after surgery to remove metal pellets from my eye. I was denied calls to my family, denied water, and kept under armed guard. After my relatives found me, I was immediately released from custody and allowed visitors. The day I was discharged from the hospital, Morton County issued a warrant for my arrest. Under legal advisement, I chose not release this video due to warrants issued until I received necessary medical care and my health recovered. And then this is what injuries he received at the time. Now, nobody helped this young man, not the water protector legal defense fund, none of the defense funds, none of the money that was raised, and I'm talking to the tune of millions of dollars.
Lots.
Went to Marcus Mitchell to help him. you saw in the GoFundMe there, he did raise several $1,000s, but as you can imagine, several $1,000s would just not cut it with the kinds of injuries that he is describing there.
Exactly.
Just yesterday, the Inforum published a story about Mr. Mitchell's case. It finally, after appeals, after battles, after fights, finally, this case is being heard. And if you could just take a look at what the case is about, it says here that a district judge dismissed the lawsuit originally of Mr. Marcus with prejudice in late 2020. Marcus Mitchell appealed the district court's decision to the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals, and this week the appeals court issued a ruling upholding the lower court's dismissal. However, the higher 8th Circuit Court reversed the district court's dismissal of other claims, including allegations officers used excessive force in shooting him, as well as Mitchell's claim that Morton County and law enforcement officials have liability for the use of excessive force by officers. And let me just read to you for a moment, folks, from the decision of the judge. It says that Sheriff Kirkmeyer, it says that on the during these protests, despite the police completely failing to provide adequate warning or announcements to disperse, officers indiscriminately deployed freezing water, chemical agents, and other weapons, including lead-filled beanbags, at individuals within the crowds. Many protesters suffered serious injuries, including loss of consciousness, facial burns, broken bones, genital injuries, and hypothermia. On January 18, in the early morning hours of January 19, protesters gathered at the bridge near the law enforcement blockade to peacefully protest. And Mitchell concedes that it was closed, the bridge was closed to traffic, but a team of officers led by Benjamin Kennelly was dispatched to the scene and issued 12-gauge shotguns that deployed drag-stabilizing beanbag rounds. Sergeant Kennelly acted as a scene commander and directed law enforcement officers during pushes, which officers rushed, advanced toward, and deployed munitions at the protesters. Mitchell, according to this, positioned himself in the front of the women and elders in the crowd with his hands raised in the air, saying Mini Wachoni, which means water is life in the Lakota language. After the countdown, several officers fired lead-filled beanbags from their shotguns at Mitchell. Mitchell was hit in 3 places, including his head. One of the rounds shattered his left eye socket and became lodged in his eye, requiring surgery. So they charged him. They did charge him. They later dropped those charges. But in this decision by the court says very, very clearly that the officers used force that was not de minimis force. Let's look at the second page of the Inforum article here, in which they're talking about what the court said. We have held time and time again. That sounds like a judge in the circuit court that is annoyed.
Yeah, it sounds like that
you don't know this already. We have told you time and time again, if a person is not suspected of a serious crime, is not threatening anyone, and is neither fleeing nor resisting arrest, then it is unreasonable for an officer to use more than de minimis minimal force against him, the court stated in its opinion. The court added, the complaint filed against Mitchell did not suggest he was suspected of anything more than trespassing and obstructing government functions, both misdemeanor crimes. Nonetheless, the officers shot Mitchell with a shotgun-propelled, lead-filled beanbags that shattered his eye socket. Our cases clearly established that gentler treatment than this constitutes more than de minimis force. The court also ruled that because it was clearly established the officer's alleged conduct violated Mitchell's Fourth Amendment rights, the court must assume the officers who allegedly shot Mitchell are not entitled to qualified immunity. And without qualified immunity, the individual officers can be sued.
Wow.
So now, normally, and one of the reasons why we didn't see a lot of lawsuits against Morton County, besides the fact that there was Russian meddling, Russian interference in what was going on, and I'm about to show you where that was coming from, that was derailing cases, taking stories and putting them on platforms like Jordan Sheridan and TYT and a lot of different platforms that were really working with Russian activists or spies or meddlers. I don't know what you want to call them.
Yep.
And I'll get you the receipts on that in just a minute, okay?
Okay.
But I just want to say first that there would have been many other cases that they did not qualify for qualified immunity because of what they did to the protesters at Standing Rock. And those stories were squashed, silenced, hidden. They were hidden by people with an agenda. People that wanted these stories to be hidden and silenced, and they wanted those stories to be hidden and silenced for a reason. Now, Marcus Mitchell, he just kept pushing and he kept pushing, and he finally got what he wanted. Do you know what this means, Duke? Because the court did not issue an order saying that they are, they're guilty of violating his rights, and therefore, Marcus Mitchell wins and he's supposed to get a judgment.
No, they dismissed.
They undismissed the dismissal and said, this case can go forward, and here's all of the people he can now sue.
Exactly.
Morton County, the individual. Let me just read you. I'll just read it right from the court order, okay? For the foregoing reasons, we reverse the dismissal of Mitchell's claim against the officer who alleges for use of excessive force. They're reversing that. Mitchell's Monell claims against Morton County insofar as this claim asserted liability for the use of excessive force, and Mitchell's failure to intervene claim against Sergeant Kennelly insofar as this claim asserts liability for the use of excessive force. We affirm the dismissal with prejudice of the remainder of Mitchell's claims, and we remand the further proceedings consistent with this opinion. So it goes back to the lower court for a new trial, a new proceeding, and the proceedings need to be consistent with the findings of the Eighth Circuit Court, which are that there is no qualified immunity. These people did violate his rights. They did use excessive force, and that officer can be personally sued as well as Morton County. So what's going to happen now is his lawyers are going to get a settlement.
Yeah.
Pretty quick.
Fast.
That's going to get settled quick because they've already lost.
Yep.
But here's something, incidentally, that happened that was very disturbing to everybody, including us here at Mexican Crossing Lines and KPPPLP. And that is that after Marcus Mitchell went through that, almost a year later, when they started forming camps in Texas for the caravans, Right around that time, Marcus Mitchell contacted the same activist
Yeah.
who was just talking about how he was shot on January 18th, the day before the inauguration of Trump. And he started spreading shot in the stomach.
Yeah.
Marcus had been shot in his body, in his torso. And they were garnering thousands of dollars of support, and it turned out to be a Jussie Smollett type of fake news,
Exactly.
mounted BS. And we exposed that. We exposed the fact that he and Orlando Cruz and a bunch of these people that were later involved in those Texas camps for the caravans were scamming people for money online. Now, I'm not saying that what happened to Marcus isn't horrible. It is. What happened to the Lakota people, what happened to indigenous people, what happened at Standing Rock is a crime, was a crime. It was wrong what happened, right?
Right.
I think that seeing what Jussie Smollett and what Marcus did, using fake news of fake hate crime or fake injuries to them, to get sympathy, to get assistance. It's a cry for help. You know, a lot of people said it's a cry for help. And that may be the case. But you have to understand that as a reporter, as a person watching this and watching everything that happened, I had to look for those infiltrators and those people that were connected to foreign government influence, because they were causing havoc, they were causing chaos, and they were there to hide the true nature of what was happening at Standing Rock, folks. And I didn't until recently start putting together all of the connections. Of course, we already knew that Trump had invested in the Dakota Access Pipeline.
Yeah.
But did you know that a Russian oligarch that the U.S. still has not sanctioned, that is kind of getting treated with kid gloves as other people's yachts are being, homes, mansions are being taken from them in other countries. And that is not Oleg Deripaska, Abramovich.
Yep.
Roman Abramovich. Do you know who
No.
Roman Abramovich is?
Nope.
Well, let me tell you how he's connected to the Dakota Access Pipeline.
Oh.
This is from a tweet from Jenny Cohen, and she says, why hasn't the U.S. sanctioned Roman Abramovich? Do you guys remember this? Abramovich and Trump are family friends.
Okay.
And Abramovich has ownership, like Trump, in the company that's making the Dakota Access Pipeline. So he has ownership in Energy Transfer Partners, in Kelsey Warren's Energy Transfer Partners. I definitely recommend y'all go and read this whole thread. But attached to that is an article, as you can see there, from the Trump Watchdog WordPress that is titled, Who is Oleg Deripaska, and why did Paul Manafort work for him? Oleg Deripaska is one of the people that was working with Paul Manafort. Remember, Paul Manafort was...
yeah.
Can you bring back that... I'm not done with that.
I'm sorry.
With that image.
Yeah.
In fact, we're going to read more of it if you manage to scroll down, because I want to read the whole thread as I was speaking about recommending to my audience, because it's very interesting what it says. So we remember, folks, that Paul Manafort was criminally charged and convicted for his involvement working with Oleg Deripaska and the stuff that he was doing on behalf of Russia in Ukraine. Remember?
Yep.
Okay. Well, in that article, they talk about the combination of those people and how they're connected to Abramovich. So you should read it. There's another connection here, that steel made by a Russian company that is tied to Putin, and also owned by Roman Abramovich,
Wow.
was used in the Keystone XL pipeline and Dakota Access pipelines.
Wow.
This is not something that I was aware of
No.
at the time. This was not something I was paying attention to. Did I see Russians and Russia all over Standing Rock?
Yes.
Yes, I did. Let me show you one of the many different articles how people that were out there had a Russian-backed agenda. Take a look at this article that talks about an activist that was at Standing Rock. His name is Gutierrez. And if you can scroll down for me, please, on this document, you'll see that Gutierrez, who is no stranger to criminal activity, he was one of the people flying drones.
Okay.
And because of him flying drones at protests around oil pipeline, gas property things, they passed a law that made that illegal. They passed a law against drone flying because of what this gentleman did.
Yes.
Okay? So it says at the bottom here, Gutierrez, who's no stranger to criminal activity in his own past, attended the Standing Rock protests where protesters issued a litany of brutal threats aimed at law enforcement and sought to use Molotov cocktails, rocks, arson, and roadblocks. Gutierrez's vow to ignore the new Texas drone law is just the latest of a long line of criminal tactics used by the environmentalist left to push their Russian-backed agenda.
Wow.
Let's take a look at more of the Russian people that we saw at Standing Rock, including one of the reporters for standing for Russian television, Samira Khan. Here you can see that she had posted a Facebook post about Alaska and Putin, and you see the people, some of the people that she tags, including Sarah Pipes, who is one of the many people that came out of Hawaii, that came to Standing Rock, that had a lot of money, that were financing activists at Standing Rock. And it includes Bernie Sanders, people for Bernie Sanders, Desiree Kane.
Yeah.
Okay.
Desiree Kane.
One of those people very much connected to Russian propaganda.
Yep, for sure.
Who was working as one of the activists paid for by the folks working with Seven McDonald and Wes Clark and Maggie Day. And here's Wes and Samira out at Standing Rock. She was Miss New Jersey. She's a beauty queen also, on top of everything else she does. And here you see her, Samira Khan, with the tags in there, Josh Fox, the documentary filmmaker, and Jordan Sheridan of TYT. And don't forget the actress and activist Frances Fisher. Okay? I want you to see who all was together, working together with the Russians at Standing Rock.
Yeah.
And why it bothered me so much at the time that this Russian propaganda and these propagandaists were hijacking the message. The minute that I saw the day after November 20th's attack with the water cannons and all of that, and all of a sudden I see this 6-foot blonde, pink-haired Christina Hollenbeck identifying herself as a medic, which she's not, giving an interview to Russian television news talking about we need help, I knew something was wrong. And let me just show you, Samira Khan is one of Russian television news's top journalists that they sent to Standing Rock. Wow. You can go ahead and show us the slide here.
There we go.
It says, top Russian journalist Samira Khan. And then we can go to the next slide right away where they're talking. This is Wes Clark Jr. himself, okay? This is Wes Clark Jr.'s text messages where he is talking about Miss Hollenbeck and other people.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, I'm sitting with Gwendolyn Cates, the photographer and documentarian that Hollenbeck stayed with in New York. Hollenbeck, Gwendolyn Cates, all of them working together. And he tells me, we found a Russian connection. More? Wes, did you find more Russian connections?
Mm-hmm.
Wesley Clark seemed to be right in the smack dab in the middle of all of the Russians and the Russian connections and hanging out with the people that were spewing Russian propaganda and Turkish propaganda at Standing Rock, to include Phyllis Young and Tulsi Gabbard, because he was hanging out with Tulsi Gabbard. Have y'all noticed? Can you go to the next slide, please? Have y'all noticed there's Phyllis Young, Wes Clark, shoulder to shoulder with Tulsi Gabbard. Folks, have you been paying attention to who's been talking about the war in Ukraine of late? Have y'all been paying attention to what they're saying? Because I see Wesley Clark tweeting about, oh, let me wax poetic about what I know about the Russians. Well, let me tell you all about the plan of the Russians. You seem to know a lot. Now your daddy's on television talking about the war in Ukraine.
Exactly.
I wouldn't trust these people as far as I can throw them, because you and your daddy was all up in that Turkish and Russian influence.
That's right.
And now you can clearly see it. Now you can clearly see that Tulsi Gabbard, when she's talking, when she's using all of the Russian talking points, when she is praising Putin and demanding that we back off from helping the Ukrainian people. Now you see very clearly that that Tulsi is a Russian asset, that Tulsi should be investigated, and so should Wes Clark Jr. You know who else was co-opted by Russians? A lot of the leadership that was out at Standing Rock that I was criticizing.
Yes.
And I know I got a lot of heat for that, because a lot of people were telling me, Cindy, stop criticizing. Those are our leaders. Yes, but some of them sold out. Otherwise, they wouldn't be working with the Russians.
Exactly.
Take a look for yourselves. Spewing the Russian talking points. FERC and Ohio EPA ban energy transfer partners from drilling in Ohio. Here is Chase Iron Eyes on Russian television.
Wow.
Working with the Russians, all these folks. And I'm going to show you, and I'm going to tell you more about those connections between all of these people. Because you know that they were putting people in place in the media, in all of these activists slash documentary filmmaker slash political actor roles that went from Standing Rock protests to protests against other pipelines to protests in Detroit against the poisoned water to protests against the Nazis in Charlottesville to different types of activist groups going into areas of climate crisis or natural disasters like the wildfires and the hurricanes, and then on to the Caravan Support Network and the encampments with these people that had already been cultivated, had their platforms grown, support, money, backing. Then they were all unleashed into the world, and now they're sitting in their places.
Yep.
They're ready. They're ready to spew the propaganda.
Yep.
They're already set in place. But you know what? Just as quickly as we are figuring out who Putin really is, and we can see him for the naked aggressor and war criminal that he is, we can see him and his agenda and what he pushed and what he funded and who he bought in the United States. Just as the walls are closing in on him, the walls are falling away from our eyes so we can see all of these Russian propagandists, all of these people that Putin paid and had in his pocket because they're showing their whole selves now. And we can see what they really are. I'll be bringing you and uncovering more of the connections between Standing Rock activists, born in Standing Rock activists. And don't forget, folks, I'm just going to say this to close. If you want to look at the Democratic Socialists of America, also born at Standing Rock, AOC, TYT funded all those people in the squad.
Yep.
I'm just saying, if you look at their talking points and what they're saying about the Ukraine war and what they're saying about helping Ukrainian people, it sounds a whole lot like what the Russian-backed people in America have to say.
Wow.
Winkadink?
Yep, I got it. They've been primed and...
I think not. Check out what the people from the Green Party, check out what the people from the Democratic Socialists of America, to include Mr. Bernie Sanders, check out their reluctance and their reticence to help the Ukrainian people because they had Russian backing, Russian meddling all up in their stuff. And we're going to expose all of it now. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to A Mexican Crossing Lines with your hosts, Cindy Gomez-Schempp
And Duke Gomez-Schempp.
You've been listening to 88.1 FM, KPPPLP, Fargo, Moorhead, where we are adding local color to your airwaves. Good night, God bless, and glory to Ukraine.